Siouxsie and the Banshees.
(1975). Between the death of glam rock and the explosion of punk, two rebels by the names of Susan Janet Ballion, more famously known as Siouxsie Sue, and Stephen Severin would meet. In 1976, the two would begin following the world's most infamous band at the time, the Sex Pistols. In September of the same year, during the 100 Club Punk Festival, organized by Malcolm McLaren, manager of the Sex Pistols, the two had learned that one of the groups scheduled to play wouldn't be able to, and withdrew at the last minute. Siouxsie proposed to Severin that they play, despite not having a band name, nor any additional members. 2 days later, they appeared at the festival backed by two borrowed members, one Marco Peroni on guitar, and Sex Pistols' Sid Vicious on drums. The group were not supposed to last as they intended to disband following the performance, but they were asked to perform again, and again, and again. They would soon be backed by guitarist John McKay and drummer Kenny Modis. Following several gigs in 1977, they were scheduled to perform their first live TV performance in November on Tony Wilson's So It Goes. The group had little to no issues selling out venues in 1978, but problems had arose when trying to find a suitable contract that would allow them complete artistic freedom like they wanted. British record label Polydor offered them exactly this, and the band agreed, and they would be signed in June of this same year. Their premiere single, Hong Kong Garden, was hailed on its release as a breath of fresh air in the music scene as it reached the top 10 in the UK. Their debut album, The Scream, was released in November 1978 to fantastic acclaim, so much so that Sounds named it the best debut album of the year. This thunderous beginning would be followed up by Join Hands in 1979. A sonically darker work than their debut, it received great praise by British press upon its release, and the band would set out on an impressive tour to support. At the beginning of the tour, however, McKay and Morris would leave the group following an argument and an in-studio signing. Needing replacements immediately, the manager of the Banshees called in former Slits drummer, Budgie, and he was hired shortly after. But the band had difficulty finding a new guitarist, so Robert Smith of The Cure offered his help. The tour resumed without problems, and after it was finished, Smith returned to The Cure. Following this tour, Budgie would become a permanent member of the group, and they would return to the studio to record their third studio album, Kaleidoscope, with the help of former Magazine guitarist John McGeoch. It was with this album that the band completely changed their approach and offered a new sound to their listeners. This album peaked at number 5 in the UK albums chart and was incredibly influential, with Johnny Marr of the Smiths praising McGeoch's playing on Happy House. And fun fact, this track was also sampled on The Weeknd's House of Balloons. This new lineup would then tour the USA for the first time in 1980, with their first shows commencing in New York. For their fourth album, Juju, the band recorded the album with a more concert approach, performing them live before recording in the studio. Severin had once stated, "Juju was the first time we'd made a concept album that drew on darker elements. It wasn't pre-planned, but as we were writing, we saw a definite thread running through the songs, almost a narrative to the album as a whole." Juju would be one of their biggest sellers and one of their most influential in the group's catalog, with singles like Spellbound and Arabian Nights leading the release of this album. 1982's A Kiss in the Dream House would see yet another departure from their previous styles, seeing more string arrangements and a more psychedelic inspiration. Another notable mention here is that the band Slowdive shares the name of both single and track 9 of this album, although Nick Chaplin of Slowdive has said that this name was inspired by a dream and not by the Banshee single. But the inspiration for what most would call their best release would be a series of chaotic and frightening experiences. "We were caught up in the insanity of the moment," says Budgie. "We were losing the studio, we were losing a member, we were losing our minds." After the release of A Kiss in the Dream House, they subsequently fired McGeoch as he was suffering from worsening issues with alcohol, and Severin had once again asked for the assistance of Robert Smith.
Primary by The Cure. Now, in that band is Robert Smith, who is now with you. Can you explain, because I understand he first actually toured with you in 79, somewhere around there. Is he with you permanently, with The Cure permanently, or with both?
Nobody knows.
Nobody ever knows?
He's with all and none.
He what, sorry?
He's with all of them and none of them.
In 1983, the members worked feverishly, both on material for the Banshees and for their own respective side projects. Siouxsie and Budgie worked collaboratively on their own group, The Creatures, and they had composed their first album, Feast. Severin and Smith were recording as their group, The Glove. During this time as well, they would also release their cover version of the Beatles' Dear Prudence in September of 1983. Their sixth album, Hyena, would follow shortly after. Robert Smith would quit soon after, having said that juggling so many projects was taking a toll on him mentally. The group were quick to replace him though with John Valentine Crothers of the band Clock DVA. This reworked lineup spent most of 1985 working on Tinderbox, their 7th studio album. The iconic Cities and Dust and the haunting Candyman were released as singles before the band were to embark on their lengthiest UK tour to date. Tinderbox was released the next year in 1986, and due to the amount of time spent crafting Tinderbox, the group felt they needed a change of pace and recorded the cover album Through the Looking Glass in 1987. After its release, the band decided that Crothers no longer fit the band's vision and began working on new material as a trio instead. In 1988, after a lengthy break, multi-instrumentalist Martin McCarrick and guitarist John Klein were recruited for the recording of Peep Show, their first album to be recorded as a quintet. Praise was once again centered on the band's ability to shapeshift and morph their sound into territories uncharted. This album would be their first real breakthrough to the United States, making it to number 68 on the United States Billboard 200, where it stayed for 20 weeks. A tour followed, and once it was finished, the band decided to take a break. 3 years later, the band returned with the single Kiss Them For Me, which would mark yet another stylistic change, this time opting for a more pop-oriented feel than their past works. Their 10th studio album, Superstition, was released in June of 1991. The group would then subsequently tour the United States at the inaugural Lollapalooza tour. New songs were recorded in 1993 and performed in festivals abroad. John Cale, formerly of the Velvet Underground, was hired shortly after to produce what was left of what they were working on. In 1995, they would release their 11th and final studio album, The Rapture. For their final tour, John Klein would be replaced by Knox Chandler, formerly of the Psychedelic Furs. And in April of 1996, after having spent 20 years together as a group, Siouxsie and the Banshees would disband.
I think probably what was trying to be put across is that I think because this group is, well, me and Stephen anyway, we're very much self-taught musicians or whatever, without any kind of rock and roll background.
Siouxsie and the Banshees are heralded as being trailblazers and one of the greatest bands to emerge from the ashes of punk and post-punk, and it's for great reason. Having inspired countless musicians, examples including Johnny Marr having said that he regretted not seeing Mark I of the band, but Mark II were better, as well as Tom York, who said that seeing Siouxsie on stage in concert in '85 inspired him to become a performer. They've also had an incredible impact over many genres, including not only post-punk and punk, but new wave, synth-pop, gothic rock, alternative, shoegaze, and trip-hop. Their influence doesn't stop at just music either. Siouxsie's iconic visual style still inspires today, and she is credited with being an early creator of the gothic genre and style, although she doesn't like that title very much, having even influenced Jenna Ortega's famous dance scene in the series Wednesday.
I watched Siouxsie and the Banshees because she was a reference made. I feel kind of bad because I ripped off a couple of her moves. There's like a move in the dance where I'm jumping to the left and I have my arms to the side.
With 20 years of incredible music, the Banshees have left behind an incredible legacy of unforgettable tracks that are sure to inspire for many years to come. Hey, did you enjoy this video? And did you learn something as well? If so, don't forget to click that like button and don't forget to pop that subscribe button as well for more videos like this in the future. Your support means so much to me. That's it. Take care and peace.